been using pigment-based printers like this Epson P900 for years to make art prints in my business, but I've resisted trying out the newer dye-based printers because I've had bad experiences with dye-based ink prints fading in the past. I just haven't wanted to risk it because, the quality of your art prints and how long they will last while hanging on somebody's wall without fading is super important. But what I recently found out is that there's this company, it's called Wilhelm Research, and they tested both of these printers for the longevity of their ink. And this Epson EcoTank 8550 right here, it actually makes prints that last quite a long time. According to Wilhelm, they will last 89 years if you're framing them under glass and hanging them in rooms in your home under normal lighting conditions. Versus the Epson P900, this pigment-based printer, it's going to last longer. It's going to last well over 100 years. But if you're trying to save money on a printer, and that's why people are going with the EcoTank, because it is cheaper. It's cheaper on the printer cost, but also a whole lot cheaper on the ink. You can make 8x10 size prints with this printer. The ink cost is only 13 cents a piece. Your P900, the ink cost for that same 8x10 size print is 65 cents. So there's a big difference. Also, the P900 is twice as expensive as the 8550. So with all of this in mind, you might be asking yourself, well, then why would I ever buy the P900 over the 8550? If I can save money, why wouldn't I want to do that? Well, that's what we're gonna go over in this video. And first thing we're gonna do is look at the print quality. We're gonna do a side-by-side comparison. I did a series of color tests. So this one here was printed on my P900, and then this print was printed on the 8550. So pigment ink versus dye-based ink. And you can see that the pigment ink on this matte paper, what I used for this test was the Premium Presentation Paper Matte. And you can see on the matte paper, the P900 has a much darker blacks and more darks just in the area the colors really pop. Whereas the 8550 on this paper, I used the right ICC profiles and everything. I didn't edit it, I didn't change anything, but you can see it's just a little bit more washed out. The blacks aren't nearly as dark. They look more like a charcoal, like a dark gray, not a pitch black like these do. And the areas through here where it has like dark purples and any of the fading doesn't look nearly as good. The orange here versus here, you can see there's a difference. I hope this is coming through in the video, but to the eye, you can definitely see a difference. This print looks way more vibrant. The colors pop way more with the pigment ink versus the dye-based ink on the 8550. So then what I thought I would do is try to edit my file in Photoshop to make the blacks a lot darker in my file to see if I could just pump this up in the print in any way. And I also decided to print it on a different type of paper. I used this luster paper for this example. Now you can see here that these prints, there still is a difference, but they're more indistinguishable. Close enough that I think that most customers coming into somebody's art fair booth would not be able to tell the difference. I want to show you one more example. So here is my print from the P900. And then here is the 8550 with the matte paper, just like in the first example. And you can see in this one the differences in how the print turned out. This is so much more bold and vibrant. This one is fairly washed out. It doesn't look nearly as good. And every time I edited this and tried to print it, I never could get it as good looking as it does in the pigment-based ink. And it's because there's a lot of gradual transitions between the blacks here and the dark purples, and especially like in these areas, you can tell there's huge differences in the way this print looks than this one. This really pops. This one does not. All of that said, if I were to give these two printers a letter grade based upon their print quality, I would give the P900 an A+, because its prints are beautiful. On any type of paper, they just look amazing. I can get the wide color range that I want. The colors pop. The blacks are super dark when I want them to be, and the fades between the darkest black areas and lighter dark areas are amazing. They're beautiful and perfect. They really show form and depth and dimension in the prints. But the 8550 lacks some of that depth and dimension, and the colors are not quite as vibrant print, it doesn't print the blacks as dark, and because of all of this, the prints just aren't quite as good. So I give it a B+. But if you're looking to save money on a printer and you want to go with the 8550, the one tip that I can give after all of my testing is make sure to print on either the luster or the glossy paper. Because if you do this, it's going to turn out to be a much better print than if you're printing on matte paper. Some other differences between these two printers that you should know before you go out and decide to buy either one. On the 8550, you can only print up to 13 by 19 inch prints. On the P900, you can print up to 17 by 22 inch prints. And I think this is an important distinction to make because if you're an artist and you're trying to run an art business with only one printer and you're going to have this printer for, let's say, 3 to 5, maybe even 10 years operating in your business, and you don't want to have to buy another one later to make larger sizes, the P900 is a clear winner here because it allows you to make 16 by 20 inch prints. And I have a lot of customers who want that size of print. They don't always want the smaller sizes. Now, you could buy the cheaper printer and then use a print-on-demand company to make those larger print sizes for you. But I think it's just better to have that flexibility within your business to be able to make them yourself, especially if you're selling your work at art fairs and you're wanting to take a lot of prints to sell at shows. Another thing to keep in mind is the ability to print on canvas. The P900 prints on canvas. You can even buy an additional roll paper adapter for it, so it makes printing on anything that's a roll-based medium a lot easier. But with the 8550, it technically doesn't even support canvas. Now, there have been a few users, I've watched videos on YouTube, who've kind of hacked this thing by cutting 13 by 19 inch sheets off of a roll, or maybe even flat sheets that were a bigger size that they purchased, and then feeding them through the machine. But you have to be careful when you're cutting your own sheets that the edges aren't frayed out or anything, because it's going to jam up in here if you do that. Beyond that, it's a lot of extra work to do. I mean, personally, I don't want to have to be doing that every day in my business just to make like an 8 by 10 canvas print, for example. But the other thing is that there's not an ICC profile that comes with this printer for canvas. And so because of that, you're having to use one of the other ICC profiles like the Velvet Fine Art Paper ICC profile. And this means that your colors are never going to look as good as they will if you had an ICC profile that was perfectly matched to the paper. Also, canvas is like printing on matte paper. And we all know what the matte paper does in this printer. It doesn't look nearly as vibrant or good because the blacks aren't as dark. And that's how your canvas prints are going to turn out if you use this printer. I personally won't be using this printer to make art prints because my P900 is so much better and I already have all of the print files on my computer configured to the P900. Because if you remember earlier in the video, I had to actually like go in and edit that file to pump up the blacks and make the contrast better and amp up the saturation to try to get it to look as good. And I have over 350 paintings that I've made into prints, so it would take me a lot of Photoshop editing if I were to switch over to this printer. And the cost savings is not that much. You can make an 8 by 10 size print with the 8550 for around 50 cents. You can make an 8 by 10 size print on the P900 for about $1. And so for me, there is a savings if I were to switch to this, but I would be making a lower quality product for my customer and only saving myself 50 cents a print. And that's just not really worth the effort for me. So I'm going to be returning this printer because I really just got it as a test. I just wanted to see how good the prints were. But if you're an artist and you're just starting out and you don't have the money to invest in a pigment printer and you're looking for the best available lower priced printer, then I think the 8550 is a good way to go. It'll get you started in your business, and then later on, if you want to upgrade so that way you have better prints, can print bigger sizes, print on canvas and all of that, then you can upgrade to a SureColor P900 or whatever SureColor series printer that is available at that time in the future. If you would like more information on how to make your own art prints, I have a playlist. You can check it out here. Lots of free resources there for you. All right, thank you so much for watching. Hope this helps. See you next time.